How's it, everybody?
Hi, Rayleigh.
Hello,
Hi,
everybody.
Katya.
I
Good,
I'm
good, good. Yeah, it's cold. Sorry, I'm wearing a beanie. It's cold. We're getting a cold front in from the Western Cape. They're talking about something like 9 degrees. That's cold. Yeah, that's cold for us.
yeah, yeah.
9 degrees
So,
is cold for you. Ah, Fahrenheit.
yes.
Probably you use Fahrenheit, no?
Say again.
Fahrenheit. You use 9 degrees
Well, we say
Fahrenheit.
degrees. I don't know what the Fahrenheit is.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Now,
Uh,
in some places, Drakensberg and what's the other place? Sutherland. And what's this other place in the Western Cape? That goes 0 to minus degrees. Because we get some areas we get snow, and it is very. Sutherland is the most coldest place over and above Drakensberg Mountains is the most coldest place in South Africa.
Mm.
So we get all of that different weather all in one concoction, if you want to call it that way. So yeah.
Yeah. We are we are in a very lame summer. It's always
Okay.
raining and cold, and comes the sun, everything makes it humid, and it goes to rain again. Beautiful summer.
thanks.
Beautiful German summer.
Now, at least, yeah. Now, when we get our summer, it's very hot. It's like in the 30, we call again 30 degrees. Sometimes it can go up to 35, maybe even 40 degrees, depending on
Oh,
circumstances. Because I'm on the high veld, they call it the high veld, on top part of South Africa.
Yeah.
So the weather is slightly different to the western coast or to the coast. So when it gets hot here, it gets hot. Trust me.
Okay. I won't complain anymore. I leave you
Just want
like
to ask Deborah something quick. Deborah, did you get the thing on Israel?
Hi, good morning. For me, it's an hour earlier
Yeah.
than
Well, it's good evening
yesterday.
for me.
Yeah, thank you very much. And it is the one that I was looking for because that's the doctor I told you, Yossi Balin, that made the
Okay.
agreement with the Vatican. Exactly.
Okay, so there's two,
So,
the original agreement, and then it looks like an addendum. So we can confirm now that the Vatican is directly linked into the government structure because it says the state of Israel. And we know the word
yes,
of is the
yeah,
link to this whole thing in any case. Okay, well done. Great stuff. Look, if I
exactly.
do find
Thank you
things for
very much.
everybody,
Thanks. I went through it. There's a lot of things behind that also, But yeah, it looks as if they've taken over
yeah.
the
Because I
country.
know there was a story about Jerusalem and then the New World Order trying to run from there. So, and
Yeah.
it was quite interesting because I was trying to find South Africa also, like I said last night. I tried to find for South Africa because there must be a connection somehow. However, I will have to continue looking. What I'm gonna do is I'm going to translate from English to Latin because it's a lot of the stuff is actually in Latin. Okay. So that's maybe
Yeah.
why I'm not picking it up because I was actually looking for any documentation on the Unang Sanctam Trust. Now, I know it's a paper
Oh,
bull, so now I'm going to go do the paper bull and then put the Latin in. Then hopefully I can get it because when we do the court cases, that's one of the questions we want to put into the court to saying that there is an actual global estate trust, okay, and then because I'm trying to find the link. Like, okay, Anna said the governments are all linked to the Vatican somehow, okay, because they are actually supposed to be the trustees.
I
Um,
see.
okay, I see Tony's here. So, okay, great. If I find anything for any other countries, I will send it onto the Telegram, and then you guys can decide how you want to use it. I yield. Hello, Tony.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi,
Thank
Tony.
you.
Hey everyone, hi, how are you?
hi, Tony. Hi.
Good evening.
Good evening, hello, hello, hello. So just waiting for Anna, if you just bear with me.
All good.
How are you keeping, Tony?
Yeah, it's been a tough few months, but it's coming around now, trying to settling down. So giving me a bit of more freedom. But when you've got some difficult family, they can become the worst enemies. They're not family are supposed to be family, but I'm fairly certain some of these family members are not from my family. They've just managed to gate crash the party somehow. Um. Anyway, yeah. Let me just check with Anna. Bear with me 1 second.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this is the moment that we have separated, no?
Well, let me say this to you. The COVID pandemic has actually proven, well, they've achieved their objective by destroying the family structure. And
Absolutely.
you begin to realize how much indoctrination actually takes place. And you think it wouldn't be happening to your own family. But I take my mom. She took the 4 jabs, okay, after I told her not to take it. And of course, the thing got thrown in my face. Are you a doctor? Are you an expert? No, I'm not. I just do research. And she took all 4, and I'm actually waiting for her to die. And I told her, you're going to die from the vax. So, it's disheartening, it's scary, and it's a concern. Even with your own children, when they go out and they go out, experience the world. Where's the That's like me now, for example. I'm trying to undoctrinate my son, okay? Because I was the head of the family, and I told him you could do X, Y, and Z, and this is the belief of the system that you believe you can obtain justice or remedy or anything like that. Now, I was what, 50, 51, 52 when I started the journey. Now I've got to undoctrinate him, and now he doesn't want to believe me, although he knows that I'm vigilant in my research and I'm giving him information. And it's a battle and a half because my daughter's only 12. So if anything does happen to me, I must be able to trust him enough to look after his sister, but he also needs to know how to look after his sister. And Mookie said something very strong. I think it was Mookie that said it last night. If the mothers and the fathers don't do the correction, there is no point. Okay, I
Yeah,
yield, Tony.
Oki said that.
Thank you, everybody. Anna, are you here? Are you with us?
She's running a few minutes behind, but she will be here very, very shortly.
No problem. No problem, bro. Is she going to be on video or just audio?
Video. I'm trying to fix her camera.
All right. Make sure her face is up, not yours, please. Only joking. You're half Irish. Have to remember.
Check, check.
How's little Superman?
How's what?
Little Superman.
He's Jim. That's all we can say.
No, I'm talking about your son.
Taking a nap right now, thank God. Little bugger's walking around now.
Oh, yes. I heard 9 months walking. My goodness. He'll have a cape
10
on
months.
soon. 10 months. He'll have a cape on soon. Flying.
Turned into a little baby gorilla.
How's
Nothing is safe.
Jim had a better night last night or the night before, but how was he last night?
I don't know. I just got here.
All right.
All right, I'm gonna go light a fire under Anna.
No problem, no problem. So yeah, we're expecting quite a few here. I'll just say this anyway, quickly. So yeah, there's actually going to be a podcast. This is not obviously the podcast. This is just going to be a webinar. I'm getting set up properly with a podcast to go live on the various platforms. More than likely from next week, but this week it's just giving everyone an opportunity, obviously, to reconnect with Anna, who especially if you haven't spoken or heard from her directly. So I did want to specifically talk about remedies that people are asking a lot of questions about. Number one, well, in my eyes, being Anna's indemnity bond. So I'm going to delve into that. I told her we just want to. She's obviously published a public notice about what to do when you have the indemnity bond and when it's there and created and how you can go and use this in the court. But there's a lot of people still questioning how do we actually what is the process for creating our own state indemnity bond that can be used by the living lawful people. So that's one of the main topics of conversation. The other is it's really going to focus on remedy. You've probably seen obviously a lot of the webinars that she does. So I've learned a lot from that, and they're very very informative. But I think right now people are crying out for a remedy. I think most of you will agree. And so there she is.
God help us all.
Your God has no power here.
Where did my coffee cup disappear to? That's the more
Coming up.
pressing question.
Well, you lost your phone.
I lost my phone, I lost my mind, I lost my house. What more do I need to lose?
You've still got your sanity just about.
I'll tell you what, I woke up this morning and found an offer from Scott Besant on my desk. Um, it was insulting. They're trying to recreate the old Roman birth bond, and they're going to propose doing this by setting up a treasury account for each new baby and contributing $1,000 in fiat money to each new baby. And then, of course, they will latch on to the baby's name and estate and carry on the same bullshit, but at no cost to themselves. I mean, virtually no cost, just the cost of the accounting, And they think they're going to get away with this. They think we're going to fall for it and that we're not going to object. Well, I spent the last 2 hours crafting a adequate reply as an international public notice and serving notice on the international criminal courts and the international commercial courts and officers responsible for enforcement. They have no idea that the public has awakened. And, they actually think they're going to get away with this medieval ancient Roman crap in the modern day. They truly believe that they can just do these things and people are going to be their victims. Well, not
That's what I'm.
anymore.
How could he possibly think that's just going to be okay? That makes no sense.
Well, they're misrepresenting it. They're not giving full disclosure. They're sinning by omission. They are presenting this as a good thing. They're putting it forward as a savings account for each baby, so that they learn more about money and how to save money and how interest works and that sort of thing. And if it were just a free gift, it'd be a lovely little gesture, right? But it's not a free gift. We know what it is. And, they should be ashamed of themselves.
Well, not dissimilar to what Trump is doing with, I suppose, with the QFS, etc.
Yeah, it's just continuing the same old Swift system under a different name, essentially.
Yeah.
Taking over a privately owned system, the Swift system, and then proposing to give it a new name and continue to use it in an even more coercive and organized fashion.
Okay, that
Well,
was an interesting.
I gave them a counteroffer that you'll see.
You can't reveal any details yet, though.
You have to understand what's going on here.
Trying to get them out. Out. Go. Get out.
And I now have a lap full of hot coffee on me.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh no.
Sorry.
Was that
coming up?
Well, this is an inauspicious beginning to our endeavors here.
Never a
Nonetheless,
dull moment. Never a
we
dull
shall
moment.
sally on.
You need more coffee too, don't you? Go ahead and pull. Oh, come on.
Of course, I need more coffee.
I can handle that.
Oh God.
What happens every morning is that the house dogs and the remote center dogs, the guard dogs from other locations show up here for the day. And what goes on is this wild melee of dog greetings. They have to greet each other and they have to greet the whole house. And so they rampage through the entire house, making sure that everything is where it should be. And what you just witnessed is their daily a pack reading. It's when the pack rejoins, and so they count noses and they sniff butts and they do all the dog things that are proper for dogs. And sometimes I get in the middle of it because they like to hide under my rather large desk. So that's what they were doing. I'm sorry.
Well, this actually brings me to something I do want to ask. I think Nitty may have asked this in a different way recently, or maybe on the 4th of July podcast. But what is your typical day?
My typical day. My typical day begins somewhere between 4:30 and 5 o'clock in the morning. And it goes from there. And it develops usually as a bunch of messages and things that have accumulated overnight from other corners of the world. So there's a review of international correspondence and news headlines and correspondences. I spend the first hour or so replying to those usually, or at least thinking about how I'm going to deal with some of it. And then I typically have teleconferences and meetings via Zoom or WebEx or other media like
Platforms.
this. And then I may or may not get a lunch break, usually not, and go straight into the early afternoon until about 3 o'clock, when I'm typically done for the day in terms of having meetings of this kind. At that point, I catch up on what I missed out on for the last however many hours, right? Again, I review the international correspondences. I catch the news headlines. I typically get some sort of a small snack or a sandwich or something, you know. And then by 4 o'clock, I'm back on the prowl and continue on taking care of, you know, replies to things and planning out the next day's business and making up work assignments for other people that they then get before they leave for home around 6 o'clock, so they know what they're doing the next day. And then around 5, 6 o'clock, I'm typically in transit somewhere. I'm usually going somewhere to do something. At the dinner time hour for everybody else, I'm out doing whatever shopping I'm going to do for my family. And then I'm back around 7, 6:30, 7. And I settle down for a night of doing whatever research or additional work needs to be done. And I usually kick off about 11, 12 o'clock. So I get
No.
about 4 or 5 hours of sleep each night.
Whoa, that's not enough. Well, it clearly is.
Well, you do what you have to do. So, you know, basically, I have to keep up, and that's how it happens. Somewhere in between all of that, I managed to take care of 2 elderly invalids who need constant attention, and so we are also managing to take care of our situation with Jim's you know, he broke his hip, so he's a complete and utter invalid at the present time. He has to learn how to put the weight on and walk again, and all of that's going on at the same time. So it's very, very busy, somewhat chaotic. We're having to move our office in the midst of all of this. So we are well and truly up to our necks.
Where are you
myself.
moving to, Anna? Where's the office moving?
Well, yeah, this moving your office in the midst of all of this is like having a fire. As Ben Franklin said, 3 moves is a fire, right? Well, that's how it feels. We have moved our office twice in 3 years. Each time it has required more expense, and it has required more, renovation and reorganization each time. And sometimes that's good, and sometimes, well, frankly, not so good. We have a constant turnover of different activities and different people doing them. We have some core people that become the leaders of all the different things that we have to do. And then they are retraining and training new people all the time. And we somehow managed to keep this together on the basis of donations.
With all
So
donations.
yes, we don't have a set budget for any of this because, of course, we don't have a set income. And so we're constantly having to ride with the tide and go with the flow and adjust to the vagaries of everybody else's feelings and pocketbooks on top of everything else.
Wow. Well, I do intend actually when we get going with the podcast next week, all going well, that we'll dig in more because I think a lot of people deserve to know more about you and your challenges and all the work that you're doing because it will help people to understand things better. But for the purpose of this call, Anna, I think a lot of people are crying out for remedies now. So one of the remedies and one of the questions I get quite a lot is about your indemnity bond, your state indemnity bond, what you created and you published recently about how to use this in the court. So I think people can get that and understand that. I certainly do, but people are actually unsure, I think, of the process of creating the indemnity bond in the first place for their respective states. So could you actually just give an overview of what you did to create yours?
Well, the way that we created ours is demonstrated by the bond itself. I mean, it's a 5-page document and it goes through, what the basis of the bond is and what is being bonded and what the purpose of the bond is and what's included in the bond. And it was essentially the public debt at that time, the U.S. public debt at that time. And we bonded it as a debt to us to secure our indemnity from any charges that resulted from their public trust by creating the public trust in our names. And, people have, some banks honor this, immediately. They just, know what to do with it and they accept it and they take it, run
Ariana,
with it.
for a minute. Wanda, can you turn off your mic, please? Go ahead, Anna.
Okay. So some banks immediately honor it and you just take it to the bank and the bank takes care of the debit and that's that. But most banks don't do that. Most banks don't know what to do with it. So you have to take it to a special office in the Treasury and present it. And you need to have it verified by your state assembly that it is a valid charge. Because, I can't possibly sit here and review each and every, say, mortgage foreclosure that people are trying to exempt themselves from. So I can't sit there and individually approve each and every mortgage. I can't know the details of each and every mortgage. So it's up to the state assemblies to verify that their members are indeed members. They are on the land and soil, therefore they are owed this exemption. And then they need to send it to this particular office. And this office then receives they receive my letter, the intent letter that basically authorizes these charges to be made in general. Then they receive the specific charge with the signatures of the state assembly officials saying, yes, this is one of our members, and yes, they are under duress and they are claiming their exemption. And basically, that's how that works. Now, every country on earth has a similar setup. So it doesn't matter if you're in the United States or you're, in the UK or wherever you are. It's the same commercial system. And the basis for the debt is their public debt, is your public credit. So that when you are standing on the land and soil, you become the creditor instead of the debtor. And you can then do the same kind of a bonding process against their public debt. Say that they have a national debt of $10 trillion. Well, then you can claim that as your credit, and you can bond them for it, which is exactly what we did with the indemnity bond. And we did it as an insurance because we're guaranteed exemption. The people of the land and soil are guaranteed exemption from all the silliness and piracy and false claims in commerce and other nonsense that these pirates are heir to. And so this is our means. The indemnity is a form of insurance that you can then employ against them and their claims to essentially wipe clean any claim that they've made against you and your property. So that's what the indemnity bond is. That's its purpose. That's how it works. That's why it works. The other important point I feel that people are missing is that it's an insurance. Indemnity is a form of insurance. Indemnity is public insurance, our public against their public, okay? So indemnity is a form of insurance. And as such, you have to have circumstances that would reasonably make a reasonable person claim their exemption and go through the trouble of making a claim. It's like making an insurance claim. You're all familiar how, you don't make an insurance claim until you have a situation or an accident or, fire, something happens where your life is being interrupted in some way or changed. Your income is suddenly gone, or you're disabled and unable to do the things that you would normally do. Okay, well, so then you make an insurance claim, right? Well, you make an indemnity claim the same way. The time to make an indemnity claim is when you have a large debt, like a mortgage, or you have a large debt like, insurmountable medical expenses that you just can't face on your own, or something of that nature. You're not going to run to the Treasury and exempt yourself from your weekly garbage costs of having the garbage hauled away. This is for large things that may be once in a lifetime sort of things, like a mortgage or catastrophic medical bill, or a college debt that you can't possibly pay off within the time frame that you have, or the health situation you have. It's set up so that people are set free of unreasonable demands and situations that occur, so that they have a solid basis in life and are not completely disrupted. Okay, so it's not to anybody's benefit, not to society's benefit either, that people lose their homes. It's to nobody's benefit that someone who's already struggling under medical conditions should be overwhelmed by debt too. And so the indemnity bond is there as a fallback, a safety net, a means for people to be exempted from the consequences of situations that they're not entirely responsible for. So that's an aspect of the indemnity bond that I think some people see this as the relief, and it's not the relief. The relief is the dismantling, dismemberment, and the complete restructuring of the financial and government systems. That's where the remedy lies, is in a new system. This is just a remedy within the old system, which is designed to provide exemption for the living people from the consequences of these corporations setting up franchises for themselves in our names.
So Anna, let's give a real life example. Let's say a state assembly member is in the process of the banker or is looking to bring a repossession order against their property or properties, and they're a reconveyed national. So can you just kind of explain with that real life situation, if there is can they, as a short-term fix, could they use your indemnity bond for that example?
Well, it's kind of an odd situation because it's a private indemnity bond, and yet I'm serving a public office within
All
our
right,
land jurisdiction government, right? And so because I'm the fiduciary, I can exercise my private bond for a public purpose. And because essentially because our government, such as it was or is in terms of being a commercial corporation, had created all of these different subsidiaries and franchises for itself, we have a situation where people in other countries have been victimized in exactly the same way we have, and who are owed, in essence, the same remedies that we are. However, based on different assets. Every country has its own national debt. And I don't know offhand what Ireland's national debt is, but I believe it's something like $3 trillion. So that becomes the national credit of the Irish people. Now, there aren't as many Irish people as there are Americans, so they don't have to have as big a debt or as big a credit. Okay. Now, one aspect of this is that we don't know what the national credit is exactly. We know exactly what the national debt is because the bankers have kept very good track of exactly what they had advanced in terms of debt. But we know that the national credit is at least as large as the national debt, and it's actually very much bigger, but we still have to figure out some sort of rational, reasonable means of making a stab at a guess at what the national credit is. Anyway, you have at least that much national credit, plus you have all that's due to be returned to you as interest that you paid on that national debt that wasn't really, it was a fraudulent expense because the way the system works is that each transaction is a zero-sum transaction. So you can't really actually accumulate debt except by pudging the books and creating a debt or the appearance of a debt where none exists. So the national debt, strictly speaking, doesn't exist except in the minds of the bankers. I'm on a podcast right now.
Oh, what'd you say? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I'm on a podcast right now.
Oh, shoot, I'm sorry. Okay, I was just, I'll call Bookie real quick.
Thank you. Well, you see, it's utterly crazy around here. Anyway, so where were we? We were talking about the national debt. Anyway, all the interest that's been paid on the national debt is a bookkeeping error. And you've already paid it. So that again is more credit for you. And every time that they pass around, every time a bill, a euro or a Federal Reserve note changes hands, it accumulates excess additional credit, prepaid credit. So the question is, how long does a euro, a bill, actually exist in the marketplace, and how much national credit does it garner in the marketplace? And this, of course, will vary according to the duration and the number of circuits that a single bill makes. We have to come up with some sort of an average guesstimate here of the lifetime of each kind of bill. I mean, will a Federal Reserve note circulate 3,500 times during its lifetime? You know, what's the answer? This is going to be quite a mathematical guesstimate. And we're just going to have to come up with something that is reasonable and settle on that, because there is no way that we will ever know how many times an individual bill circulated. There's no way to track that, but we do know that each bill lasts significantly more than just one transaction. And that means that not only is the national debt paid, therefore no interest on the national debt, but a vast amount of prepaid credit has been accumulated and is owed to the living people who were exchanging actual goods and actual services for these IOUs that get repeatedly used. You know, if you just stop and think about it, your brother gives you an IOU for $10. Well, when he pays that, you're supposed to tear up that IOU, right? But what if you didn't? What if you handed that IOU to your sister and then she demanded $10 from him and he paid it? And then she handed it to your other sister, Alice, and she handed it to him and he paid it. And it went on and on and on and on like that throughout the entire population. Well, that's what they've been doing with every euro and every Federal Reserve note, which is an IOU. There's nothing, you know, you're not getting anything substantive in return. Every single one of those notes, as in promissory notes, are being exchanged multiple times. They're never getting torn up in between these exchanges. So the same IOU gets paid over and over and over. And it gets paid with actual goods and services. So what you're actually doing is creating humongous amounts of prepaid credit that's owed to you without you even knowing it. You know, you think the transaction is finished, but it's not. And so all of this just keeps rolling forward, both the debt accumulating as they issue new bills and the credit accumulating as each IOU continues to circulate and to create more prepaid credit for the people who are actually exchanging goods and services for these IOUs. Now, if this was just one corporation, what they do is they go bankrupt and they wave their hands and claim public bankruptcy, and they throw the debt back onto your shoulders. So they've got you going both coming and going. But that's dishonesty. That's commercial fraud. And so they're not owed the corporate veil. And you're not owed, you have no obligation to pay for their bankruptcy. So that again is another way in which things tend to go south and sideways. They just don't have a leg to stand on. Once you start looking at it, you realize that this has been a jury-rigged criminal system from day one. There's really no way that we can get blood out of their turnips. You can't, when you go after a corporation, the corporation is limited to its assets and it can go bankrupt because it's under public guarantee, right? Unless, of course, they are guilty of doing things that are not worthy of public guarantee, which in this case they're not. Well, then where does the debt go? The debt goes back to the responsible principal who let the corporation run rampant, which means it goes back to the Pope, first and foremost, because he was the authority that was entrusted to discipline these corporations and make sure that they were functioning lawfully, not just merely legally, but lawfully. And he didn't, he failed at that job. So the Pope is liable. And who else is liable? Well, the other principals. In this case, it would be the British Crown, the government of Westminster, the government of Ghent. There are actually quite a few different principals that become liable. And fortunately, those principals are all land jurisdiction authorities, and therefore they have real assets and they have real obligations. So even though I don't personally think that we will ever be made whole for what they've stolen, there is a very large accumulation of prepaid credit and a very large asset share that's owed back to the living people. And that's what we're going after, and that's what we're holding them to. As I say, I don't think there's any way to give an exact accounting of how much prepaid credit people are owed, but it's an enormous amount.
I remember, Anna, you remember we were on a call with my former investment banker in Ireland, Joe, and we discussed, how we could find out maybe some more real figures in relation to the true assets that were held through Ireland. And I think or maybe you mentioned it, and we kind of calculated, or you calculated, I can't remember, it would be roughly around 85% that wouldn't be declared. So they'd be hiding about 85% of what they have. That could be hidden in obviously vaults. We tried to Joe tried to investigate. We believe a huge amount of the assets for Ireland is held in the Bank of England vault, and in terms of gold and silver and whatnot. So would that be a similar kind of ratio around the world, that you'll have your corporate governments declaring maybe 15% of what's really there?
Well, yeah, but it depends on how long they've been in this condition too. Now, the British homelands were entered into this situation in the 1840s. The Commonwealth was entered into it in kind of a sporadic fashion from the 1860s to the early 1900s. I think that Australia was one of the last of the Commonwealth nations to be engaged in this territorial government scam, I'll call it, in which corporations were then hired to function as governments. Okay, and so depending on how long you've been in this fraud scheme depends on how much of your wealth has been siphoned away. We've been under this regime since the 1860s. So we've accumulated a lot more public credit than, say, Australia, that went into the system in 1908. And we have more people than Australia. So from that standpoint also, we've accumulated more credit in the system. The problem is that nobody's been claiming the credit. And what's been happening, they haven't been claiming the credit because they didn't know the system existed and didn't know that the credit existed, right? So they had no means to claim. But the King of England, the sneaky little bastards, have known full well what was going on because they crafted this system. And so what they've been doing is they've been coming under a system of bona vacantia, it's called, B-O-N-A, bona vacantia. And it means the the pleasantly or um, the good vacancy, good from the Crown's perspective. And you just had a kind of a scandal in Britain where they found that King Charles was coming in under this same ancient Roman civil law provision and claiming the estates of pensioners in Northumbria. I don't know if you all saw that or not, but here he is. He's exercising this ancient Roman prerogative and coming in as the representative of the public and seizing the accounts and property of elderly Northumbrians who died without a will. Whether or not they have children, whether or not they have a written will, he's been coming in and seizing it for the Crown, basically. And this caused quite an uprising in Northumbria when people realized that not only were these funds not going to any progeny, but they weren't going to the local government either. So I think that the argument there was more about whether someone who died and left an estate in Northumbria should be subject to a royal privilege that allowed the king to seize that as a British holding when it should have gone back to the local Northumbrian government.
Okay, thank you, Anna. Just while we're on the subject of indemnity bond, a few questions. One from Peter Green there. Peter's in the Lancashire Assembly. So can it, beg your pardon, 1 second there. What's your question there? Bear me 1 second. So is there remedy in the indemnity bond process for those that might have paid up, quote, paid up mortgage, but could really do with some relief also?
No, that's not, if you're doing all right and you're simply looking for a generalized relief and want to free up some of your money to use for other things, it's not for that. That's what we have to pursue is a systemic relief. And I do believe that our systemic relief is on the way now. So you won't have long to wait. And the rest of it is that when you maintain your own mortgage, it's not your mortgage. We understand that, okay? But when we're talking about this, we're just calling it your mortgage because it's that portion that you've been paying. You stand to get all that back plus interest.
Okay.
So just think of it in terms of a savings account that's bearing an interest equal to whatever you're paying on the mortgage plus interest. Because this is what the Queen owes you.
Okay. Stephen asks, can it be used against the promissory notes?
Well, essentially, that's what it is doing. It's exempt you from the promissory note.
Okay. Question from Raleigh. If the wording, quote, promise to pay bearer words is not on the money bill, what does it mean?
It means it's non-negotiable. If it doesn't have a statement of payment, if it does not have a due date when the debt is due, if it does not have a wedding signature on it, identifying someone who's responsible for the account and making the payment, then it's a non-negotiable instrument. And it also has to state in what form or species of money or commodity or whatever it's to be repaid in. And if you look at the euro, I don't have one handy at my desk, but if you look at the euro, you'll see that it fails on numerous parts of that. It's a non-negotiable instrument. And it's also a non-negotiable instrument on the side of the Federal Reserve note. There's no due date for the payment to be made, and there's no actual declaration of what it's going to be paid in. I mean, if it were a silver certificate, it would be payable in silver. If it were a gold certificate, it would be a note payable in gold. But it would still need a date that certificate was
Repayable.
what was payable.
Yeah.
And none of these things do. They're all non-negotiable instruments. And that means that they're, in and of themselves, they're worthless. And we've got numerous court cases, instances where people have been defrauded or people have had large amounts of Federal Reserve notes stolen from them, and they can't recoup them. They can't even bring charges of theft because they're valueless. They're like stock certificates in a bankrupt company. Okay, they are non-negotiable instruments, and the fraud of it all is that these were printed knowing that they were non-negotiable instruments. The people that printed them up and foisted them on the public knew that they were issuing monopoly money, and they did it anyway. And there's your fraud. But you see, if they hadn't done that, then they would have had to come up with money with which to pay debt. And they haven't actually paid any debts in this system. They've created debts, and then they've offset the debts, right? But they would have had to have a system of tearing up the IOU. You see, there would have had to be a mechanism by which you could cancel out that bill,
Yeah.
cancel that IOU, and there is none.
None.
They just kept on, presenting the IOU and getting paid. And so that's the great flaw, that they printed these things as non-negotiable instruments, and they didn't provide any way for removing the instrument from the system after it was presented for payment once. Okay, and you can kind of see the problem that it presented, because if you had to take it out of the system once, then you would have to dispose of it on the spot, and you would have the expense of having to issue a new bill every time you wanted to use it to get goods or services, right? So that was sort of their problem at that point, and they decided not to provide a service like that, and instead to rely upon receipts. And this is also part of the reason that they try to force all the businesses to keep such exquisite records of exactly what their receipts were, what their income was, in every business from here to, Bell's Finery. We have to keep track of all that as receipts, right? We're given these paper receipts. Well, those receipts are proof that you received goods and services in exchange for these non-negotiable notes, right? And the businesses, they go ahead and they generate these receipts. Well, obviously, to some extent, they're keeping track of how many times the bill is being presented, because you've got the total amount that has been issued by, say, the Federal Reserve, and then you have at least some kind of a modicum of a record in the form of all the business receipts. It's not exact, again, can never be exact, because it doesn't track all the non-receipted transactions that go on. But it at least gives you some sort of an eyeball onto how many times that bill is being transacted.
A final question, Anna, thank you for that. On the indemnity bond, Ali in Somerset contacted me there recently asking, is it possible to speak to either yourself or somebody in your living law firm about a indemnity bond that was drafted by Rick, and to have a look over, because they just wanted somebody to look over, ideally yourself, for the England counties assembly. So is that possible?
I don't really see why not. I'm not sure if your indemnity bond would be lodged with Bank of England or Bank of Scotland. To tell you
Oh
the
yeah,
truth.
yeah. You've talked.
Well, what we find is that most of the debts of England are held in Scotland. When they created the Great Britain Company, and they can't really join their sovereignty without making one new kingdom, right? So they didn't really join their sovereignty. What they did is they created a company, Great Britain, and then they have been investing and wheeling and dealing and offsetting debts and incorporating different businesses and doing all this stuff, right? But what we've observed over time is that all of the credit and all of the assets tend to be lumped up in the Bank of England, and all of the debt accounting tends to be in Scotland, and that's why it's under Roman civil law. The Scottish maintained Roman civil law as their maritime law for centuries, and they've developed their own brand of Roman civil law, which they use it for maritime contracts. And it's a particularly egregious law in that it always dependably benefits the king at the expense of the people. So when it comes to handling debt, it's an even guess whether it's currently stockpiled in Bank of England or it's currently stockpiled in Bank of Scotland, but it's one of the two. And they kind of switch back and forth. I think it's just based on bankruptcies. Whoever's bankrupt at the minute, the other party is the receiver. And they just kind of toss it back and forth like a frisbee, Right now, for example, the United States Incorporated is being bankrupted. So who's the receiver? Oh, the USA Inc. And it's the same thing going on between the Bank of England and the Bank of Scotland. If the UK goes bankrupt, UK Inc. goes bankrupt, well then Great Britain is holding the receivership position. If Great Britain Company goes bankrupt, then the UK corporation is in the receivership position. And that way, the actual owners of both of these organizations are always protected and always have all their assets. It's just being held by different corporations. And the public's none the wiser. The public doesn't know the difference between the UK Incorporated and the United Kingdom as an organization, and so on. They've run this entire thing as businesses without giving any accounting to the public. They've purloined the public's assets. They've misrepresented the public in terms of what is the public. They have basically purloined, which is just another word, a different kind of theft. They've purloined the assets of the individual living people, use those assets as collateral for their corporate spending. And then when they have overspent themselves or made bad investments, they've gone bankrupt at the expense of the victims. So this is how the victims of this have gotten poorer and poorer and poorer, and the perpetrators of this scam have gotten richer and richer and richer. And this is where we are, is that, we have kind of jerked awake and realized such wonderful little bits as, oh, Great Britain isn't a country, it's a company. Doesn't that just put a different light on everything? And the UK isn't anything at all. It's a corporation. It's a municipal corporation. So it's a totally fictional entity with no necessary attachment to anything substantial. So these guys have been dealing in a fictional world, a world like a game, in which they have been the game masters and they've known the rules of the game, and they've had their referees known as judges sitting on judgment, and we've been left totally out in the dark as victims and marks to be preyed upon As you'll see in this present offer from the Trump administration to buy our babies for $1,000. And it's not even $1,000 in gold, it's $1,000 in paper. And all undisclosed. It's all just nothing but commercial deceit and unjust enrichment. So these are the sorts of games these people have been playing. And they need to be stopped. They need to be punished. The ill-gotten wealth that they've accumulated for themselves, sometimes grotesque amounts of ill-gotten wealth, needs to be confiscated and returned to the victims. And it's really that simple.
Very good, thank you, Anna. Kachel in Germany, German Assembly said some people in Germany have done their living declarations on their own a long time ago. You probably know more about this than we do. Can they apply for the or use this instrument or this indemnity bond? And what is the process for them?
Well, I would have to look at the actual paperwork to know if they got everything they needed to get. They might be better off just starting out. Most people who declared, that doesn't mean their declaration is useless or at all, because it very clearly at a point in time establishes their intent. Okay, so it's important, and it can be recorded. But there are certain aspects that most people forgot to do at the time that they did it. For example, most people didn't include their DNA, or they didn't claim their proper given name. And these are important assets that you just don't think about until you're up against it and forced to really consider. So, look at the declarations they've made and try to ascertain whether or not they covered all the bases that our declarations cover, which do establish a paramount claim on our energy, our names, our DNA, and other attributes that formerly weren't part of these kinds of declarations, because frankly, we didn't know about DNA until 1953, so we couldn't claim it, could we?
So just to recap, just in terms of actually with the indemnity bond, Anna, so let's say somebody is using their own state assembly indemnity bond, or possibly using yours. So you go into a court, obviously you have your indemnity bond, you bring your deed of conveyancing, i.e. your trade name, you bring your certificate of assumed names, and what was the final thing? The power of attorney, revoking all power of attorney. So that's all that's needed, yes?
Well, actually, no. All that's really needed is for you to submit it to the correct Treasury office, and to then the Treasury is responsible for reimbursing the bank that is holding the note. Okay, so the Treasury is involved here. And for some reason that information isn't getting out to people, but there's a specific office in the Treasury which is responsible for handling these claims. And that information, I believe, is posted on TASA, because I gave it to Terry last week or a week before. There's a specific office that has to be contacted.
Very good. Very good. So just while we're on the subject, obviously, of relief, and as I think everybody knows, where the ultimate relief is going to come from. A lot of questions are asked. I have my own opinion of this, but want to hear from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So the safety vault, that's Tony the pony. So if we the safety vault offer is as we know, closing now tomorrow. So a lot of people have kind of come up with their own assumptions on the significance of that. Is there any significance in that?
I didn't specifically say it was closing tomorrow, but
Okay.
it's closing soon. Okay.
All right. That was the first. Okay.
Okay. So Hunter hasn't actually set a shutdown date, but there is a shutdown date. Okay. people shouldn't be thinking about this as something that's going to go out into the future. This is going to shut down as we are beginning unrolling the settlement of the debts. Because otherwise you'd have people bringing in counterfeit FRNs from every corner and wanting to get gold in exchange. And it's not going to work that way. It's only going to work for those people who have declared themselves to be on the land and soil and who have put either Federal Reserve notes or euros in the bank vault, for this rainy day when we do the conversion. And then we will do the conversion at a one-to-one basis, whatever it is on that day. So once the euros and Federal Reserve notes stop trading, we'll have a final comeuppance, if you will. Say right now, gold is trading, the AFD is trading at whatever 1/10 of 1 ounce of gold is today. And so let's just take a look here what we've got. We've got, I have my calculator here. Gold is now at 3,291.90 cents per ounce of gold. So an AFD would be worth 321.19 or 329.19 each. Okay. That amount goes up and down every day because an AFD is an actual 1/10 ounce of gold. And so it goes up and down with the price of gold, the market price. So say that on September 13th, the Federal Reserve note is outlawed, recognized as a fraudulent debt instrument, and it can no longer be traded. Poof. Okay. So if you're holding a whole bunch of Federal Reserve notes, well, you've got $10,000 worth of nothing, right? But if you've put those same $10,000 worth of Federal Reserve notes in the vault, then you will get paid out 1-to-1, and there will be an exchange in AFD available to you that won't be available anywhere else. And that return will be at the current rate of 1/10 ounce of gold on that day. We Americans have the only exchange rate bridging between the actual asset-backed currencies and actual assets and the fiat system. And that was established in 1934. Now, it's an open question whether that was ever a legal thing or not, but it's still the only known exchange rate between an actual physical asset and a fiat currency. And in the years since then, gold has continued to gain value at the same time that the fiat note has been depreciated. So they started out on par 1-to-1, and now they're finishing up with the fiat note being worthless and gold being worth approximately 100 times what it was worth when all this started. So essentially what we're doing with the vault is we're making an offer to people to make up the difference and to honor that 1-to-1 correspondence that started out in 1934. You can recoup all of the depreciation that's occurred in this one transaction. So what we're doing is we're honoring the 1934 exchange rate as a 1-to-1. And as a result, you get something that's worth $239 versus something that's worthless, because what you're doing is you're recouping your losses. between 1913 and 2025. See,
And is that why the prepaid credit is backed by silver?
no, it's backed by silver because that's what the exchange rate was in.
Okay.
But as it turns out, you're doing well with the silver anyway. You're still making out fantastically. So people don't understand this. They don't understand what we're doing or why we're doing it. But in order to validate that exchange rate, we have to honor it.
And what are the final stage then? Like, as I know it's close. I mean, you've said it enough times. It's a huge mammoth task. But what are the final stages that need to kind of, or the final steps that you, as fiduciary and the American Federation and Hunter and GFG, well, as far as I know from Hunter, that most of what they've needed to do technically is done. So what are the final steps?
Well, some of the other banks have to get their act in gear and finish what they have to do. Because remember, a banking system doesn't actually exist well. It exists, but it doesn't exist well in a vacuum. It doesn't exist in a situation where it doesn't have other banks to exchange with, right? So, we can do transactions, but we need bank partners that are ready to go too. And so now we're no longer waiting on anything that we need to do. We're waiting on things that our bank partners need to do. And more and more of them are realizing, oh, holy shit, we've got to get out of this bank system because it's collapsing all around us. And it's all full of fraud and riddled with corruption and coercion. So there's this gigantic understanding that's beginning to surface in the world that what they've got isn't going to work. And that they're not going to be able to fool people into, some new system of enslavement, allowing them to continue. So what we have to back up to is all of the prepaid credit that we and our ancestors, all the way back for 6 generations, are owed, and begin trading honestly on the prepaid credit. And that's going to require a considerable amount of work on our part to come up with a clean, good estimate and agree upon it and say, okay, well, as of this date, this is what we're going to agree to. We're going to offset these debts, and we're going to discharge odious debt, and then we're going to just clean up this whole mess, and we're going to start operating off our prepaid credit, sort of like you would operate off a savings plan or a savings account. Because if you think about it, our prepaid credit is actually our savings account, and since it is all prepaid in terms of being actual goods and services, it's asset backed. So our prepaid credit can trade directly into an asset backed monetary system.
Fantastic. And do you envisage that like the banks? Well, obviously, you probably have had already much communication with them, but do you have to go to the banks individually? How does that work?
No, the banks will be collapsed.
Okay.
The banks won't be able to continue operating because they're operating in fraud, number one. Number two, they have no assets. Any assets they have are actually stolen assets. Now, assets that have been purloined under conditions of deceit and fraud. So these banking institutions that everybody thinks are so high and mighty and whatnot are actually they're criminally condemned by their own law. So they're going to have to be converted, what we call converted. There are 2 kinds of conversion: unlawful and lawful. And these banks are going to be lawfully converted and will have to stand under the law of the land instead of the law of the sea. And sometimes you hear this referenced, rarely you'll hear it referenced as being nationalized. when you hear that the banks are being nationalized, they're being lawfully converted and are then being forced to stand under the law of the land, which of course is the true law, the public law. And they can no longer pull these, purely, they're no longer operating under the foreign law of the Scottish brand of Roman civil law. They can't pull all this crap, in other words. Okay. So they're going to be lawfully converted, nationalized back into being honest banking institutions, and they're going to owe whatever extent they owe, and that will have to be handled as a separate matter, because the national debts, as I say, don't really exist.
Mhm.
And neither does interest on the national debt exist. And these bankers have been charging tremendous interest on these quote unquote national debts and benefiting themselves tremendously, basically on bad bookkeeping. They've also been hiding assets at a huge rate. And as you pointed out, Tony, 85% of the assets and the income is being diverted, and it's being hidden from the public so that they can continue to pour mouth and whine about budget constraints and these sorts of things that don't really exist either. That's just a sham. It's just a game to excuse further taxation and further regulation and even more draconian coercive controls over the individual private people. And so it's time to wake up and smell Java in that regard. Just to give you an example, here in Alaska, we have the state of state franchise. It's the State of Alaska Incorporated, okay? And it has a Department of Revenue, right? Well, the income streams come into the Department of Revenue, and they promptly get diverted and separated into budgeted and non-budgeted income. Okay, and so a relatively small portion comes into the budgeted venue, and that's what the legislatures argue over. That's their capital budgets, that's their operating budgets and all that they constantly argue over in front of you in the public. Over here in the private, it goes in, the rest of it, a large percentage, goes into direct management by the Department of Revenue. So then the Department of Revenue makes another decision, and they say, well, are we going to internally manage this, or are we going to externally manage this non-budgeted income? And they separate off again. A relatively small portion is handled inside the Department of Revenue and is invested and managed inside the Department of Revenue. And the rest is externally managed by gigantic capital management firms. And in the case of the state of Alaska, we found out that it was being managed by a former governor and by a giant, largely pension fund, but also other investments are handled through Lindsay Goldberg, which is a large investment firm. And so the externally managed accounts probably make up for 75%. So Lindsay Goldberg and the former governor are in control of 75% of the income coming into the state of Alaska Incorporated. And a lot of that is only accounted for in what they call the CAFRE accounts, the Comprehensive Annual Financial record that they keep. But in recent years, even that's being grossly fudged. It's being fudged in a special language that the accountants understand, but which average people would never be able to muddle through. They're doing things like they're amortizing pension costs for state of state employees out 35 years in advance, and then counting that as if that were due and payable today. They're doing things like theoretical provisions for Martians coming here and taking over the world, and defense costs against this sort of an extraterrestrial attack, and it's all being charged off as a public expense. You know, all these weird things are being accounted for in these accounts. And then on top of that, they're splitting off and having separate accounts. They're no longer combining accounts into one consolidated report. The quote unquote comprehensive annual financial report is actually being split into one report for the state of Alaska Incorporated, and then it has all these sub-accounts, like the University of Alaska is a separate sub-account. The Alaska Mental Health Trust Fund is another account, and they have all these different sub-accounts which only provide an annual financial account when you go to them specifically and say, okay, well, I want to see your annual financial account for 2024. And then you have to spend your own shoe leather to track it out and examine it and analyze it and figure out just how much they actually have in assets and expenses, which can be a daunting task too, because then of course they play the same games of, you know, amortizing their pensions out for 35 years and then pretending it's all due today and writing that off of this year's accounts as an expense. And you know, the bookkeeping has been just utterly screwed since 1946, when the Government Accounting Office was told to adopt double accrual bookkeeping, which is basically what the rest of us call keeping two sets of books. They've been keeping two sets of books ever since. And what I've just described for you is kind of an overview of how they bifurcate and bifurcate and bifurcate. And at each step, they're siphoning off and embezzling and siphoning off and embezzling. And there's an entire realm of this that is devoted to nothing but encumbrances. And what they do is they go in and they encumber funds off the current year budget, and then they roll them over into the next year budget. But they're encumbered for specific purposes. So to give you an example, there was a $50 billion capital investment fund created in Alaska that was never spent. And because it was never spent and it never came off the books, it was for specific capital investments that were never made. And yet it was allocated. So here you've got this huge investment fund that's just sitting there year after year after year, being reinvested and reinvested and reinvested, rolled over, encumbered funds, and no taxes taken off it at all or anything. Just the income from that is quite staggering. And they keep this as sort of a slush fund, as an investment fund in stasis. And then they don't want to actually invest it for the purpose it was set aside for. So just as an example, this huge amount of money was set aside to build gas pipeline and refinery capacity in Alaska. But they're making out, as a corporation, they're making out better in terms of having slush fund money by keeping this encumbered and just rolling it over and using all the income coming in off of it. So there's no impetus for them to actually invest that money for the purpose that it was set aside for.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've got situations like that all over the map, all sorts of allocations that were made but never spent. And it creates this gigantic slush fund. And the pension funds are unbelievable. The pension, like I described to you, how they amortize out for 35 years above and beyond what their pension obligations are. And then they roll this all back as if it were an expense this year, and they take that off the top. Well, of course, they're not going to spend anything like that. They're going to spend 1/35 of the pension allocation. That allocation gets encumbered and gets put into a huge pension fund. Okay, so now you've got this absolutely oversized, bloated, unbelievably big pension fund, was, purportedly for state of Alaska employees who are going to retire. Okay, I mean, it's something like, I don't know, say that it's $50 billion to take care of the retirement needs of a estimated 80,000 former state of employees. Okay, it's just preposterous. But this huge bloated pension fund is an investment, a capital investment fund that they use to play the stock market and to do other things that they're then reaping all the income from. So they have no impetus to keep correct bookkeeping because nobody's oversight. Nobody's watching them. Nobody's bringing them out on the carpet and saying, okay, well, what in the hell are you doing? And on top of that, then they start managing it as a private investment fund because, of course, the state of Alaska Incorporated is just a franchise of the British Crown Corporation doing business as the United States of America Incorporated. So it's actually private. It's doing public work, but it's a private organization, okay? So here they are, they're a subcontractor, and they're handling all this money, and they're going out and they're joining other pension funds. And they're forming what are called pension fund associations. And so these pension funds, which are grotesquely bloated out of all recognition or sense, start joining together these bigger and bigger and bigger investment funds. And they're buying up the entire stock market. They're hungry. They're like, the blob that ate New York. They want more and more and more investment opportunities, and they don't care how they get them. They would be buying, water mills on Mars if they could. These guys are crazy. They're just, it's like the pension funds are starving because they can't find enough new investment opportunities. And you can see how this happens if you can imagine what they've done. You can, the fight now is for medium-term notes. And one of the great gridlocks and bottlenecks in this entire system is the medium-term note. Nobody wants long-term notes because nobody can tell what the hell is going to happen long-term. You can't look more than 5 or 10 years out in any direction and have any kind of certainty of what might happen. And so nobody wants to borrow anything either. They want these new investment opportunities, but they don't want to invest. They don't actually want to take any risk to borrow any money. They want to use their existing capital. Okay, so they're not interested in getting a loan. They're interested in looking for sweet opportunities for their current actual capital. All right, so they're not borrowing anything, and what they are borrowing at most are short and medium-term notes from the banks. So the banks are slowly being choked to death because they're not getting the new loan investment income coming in. That makes them cinch down even harder. That they become more skeptical about making loans too. It goes both ways. Because if the investors are scared, shouldn't the banks be scared? Well, of course. So you've got fear, and they're both driving each other. And at the dead center of this conflict are two corporations in England, which are the only ones that issue medium-term notes. Okay, so you've got a monopoly on medium-term notes in Britain that's basically slowing down and bottlenecking all forms of investment. And this is why all these corporations are crazily reinvesting in their own stock and propping up the stock market and making it look like it's alive long after it's dead and grossly overvalued. It's Microsoft is buying back its own stock at slightly higher values and taking a loss on it every single day. They're retrading at least a third of their stock every single day and taking a loss on it in order to make it appear to the other investors that the stock is actually growing when it's been devaluating for 15 years. You know, and you're looking at this and you're just going,
Surely, Anna, it's all gathering for the inevitable ending anyway.
well, and I think why, let's just cut to the chase. Why do all this suffering and chaos? Why not just go, why not take our bucket of water, throw it over the wicked witch, and and let it all just evaporate while we walk away with our prepaid credit, which is honest, and with our assets, our actual assets, which is honest, and start over. Be done with that. You know, people get all messed up in the head about, oh, we're going to lose $249 quadrillion, and their brains are kind of struggling with even the concept of a quadrillion dollars. I say, so what? It was never real anyway. It was all just a bunch of bogus bullshit. And so we didn't really lose anything, nor did we gain anything. We're still here on terra firma. There's still just so many assets. There's still just so many people. We've got so many beef cows. We've got so many goats. We have so much seaweed, and we are in a self-limiting organic system, okay? And all this other stuff, this airy-fairy stuff, it's just nothing but imagination. So, do we lose something when we realize that we're reading a novel instead of a nonfiction book? Well, yes. Maybe the beautiful dream of unlimited money or whatever. But at the same time, we regain reality, and we start living with reality and appreciating reality and being thankful for reality. And there's really no reason that anyone should go without or suffer or lose their home or any of this. It's all just nonsense. It's all corruption. It's all fraud. The monetary system itself has been fraudulent for over 100 years. So, there's a recompense here. There's a day of reckoning. There's we have to deal with reality. And, I don't see that it's any terrible reality because we still have our assets and we still have our prepaid credit. And we can use our prepaid credit as the basis of an economic system going forward. And we can exempt people from paying back mortgages that they never owed in the first place, and from property taxes they never owed in the first place. And the Crown can take the heat for it because the Crown is liable for it. The Crown did all of this stuff. And so they should. And if they can't pay it, well, then they can't pay it. So
And
what?
Anna, does the relief that obviously is going to come, is that does that, do you have any idea when that will be? It's $1 million question.
Well, I know people are very anxious and they want a date. They want a time. They want to know, when is this ending? Well, we're just getting to the point where we have everything in place as a safety net so that when it happens, nobody has to worry. When it happens, everybody gets taken care of. And that was our entire, that was our concern, was that there be a safety net so that there wouldn't be mass chaos. There wouldn't be starvation. There wouldn't be, well, what happened in Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
You remember your history,
Yeah.
where the British came in and they evicted everybody and they taxed everybody to death, and there was vast homelessness and
Famine, yeah.
starvation. Yeah. Well, they were getting ready to try to do that to all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And our concern was to have a separate system in place, ready to go, that was honest and that was simple, that would be there prepared for that moment when it was needed. Well, we've achieved that. The safety net is now in place. And now we're in the process of arguing, I guess you could say, that the necessity of collapsing the current system, taking over the current banking system, and inverting it, if you will, flipping it to the credit side of the ledger and running it as a lawful enterprise. And you know, a lot of these banks don't want to hear it, but there's no help for it. I had the central banker of central bankers crying on my shoulder, saying, "Oh, well, you know, there's no way to, you know, keep this thing going." Well, no, there's not any way to keep it going. So give up. Just
The game is up.
flip it on its head, I told him, and use the assets, you know, the credit side of the ledger, use the prepaid credit, bring the actual assets back on the ledger, and start playing fair. Be done with it. And he didn't want to hear that because he thought, well, there's no way that we can keep up the acceleration and the, you know, the speed of the money flow. We can't keep that up. Well, who says we have to? And who says we can't? When we have an unknown amount of prepaid credit and it's looking like possibly 3,500 times the national debt of every country on earth,
Wow.
we've got enough prepaid credit to run the system full bore for a long time.
Mhm.
And we don't have to even worry about it. So, you know, why agonize over the ending of a corrupt system that was built on peonage and slavery and theft, and the beginning of a system that is honest and that is based on fact? I just, you know, obviously, I haven't participated in their system. I haven't benefited from their system. I don't care about their system. I think their system is utterly fraudulent and needs to end. Okay? And it's just a question of how it's to end. Okay? When it's to end. When do the people of the world and the courts that are responsible and the legislatures that are responsible come to Jesus, so to speak, and okay, this is completely fraudulent. You know, we've been operating in fraud for over 100 years. So we need to collapse that system. It needs to go away like the Wicked Witch of the West. You know, Dorothy needs to throw her little bucket of cold water on the Wicked Witch, and the Wicked Witch needs to kind of go and evaporate. So here's Dorothy from Kansas, or Wisconsin in this case, throwing her bucket of cold water on the Wicked Witch. And everybody's going, "Oh, well, what are we going to do without the Wicked Witch?" Well, you're going to live better, happier lives. You're going to have control of your own country again. You're going to have control of your own military again. You'll have banks that are accountable again. You'll have money that's actually worth something again. Are we all going to cry over this? Are we going to be scared? Are we going to run to our mommies and say, "Oh, we don't know what's going to happen"? No, no, we know what's going to happen. The Wicked Witch is going to go away and we're all going to be better off and we're going to sleep safe in our beds. And that's a good outcome. So, you know, from our standpoint, hasten the day. We are ready. We have our safety net in place. We have the means to help everybody without cheating anyone. We're not going to claim a public interest in everyone who has an account, or anyone who has an account, I should say. We're not going to play any of these duplicitous, self-interested institutional games. And whenever we see any hint or any sign of these things reappearing, we're going to stomp them out like crabgrass. You know, we're just not going to put up with it. So, you know, as Mr. Besant is experiencing this morning as he gets it landed back on his ever-loving desk, the days of the Roman, the antique Roman system are done. They're done. We're not putting up with it. It has no place in the modern world. And, Scotland, you're just going to have to suck it up. I'm sorry. They've made more money off of their tweaky maritime law system than any country should ever been able to get away with. And they're among the chief criminals. Nobody ever thinks about Scotland. Nobody ever thinks about Liechtenstein or Monaco or Lesotho. But everybody needs to start thinking about that, because those are the equivalent of pirate bases. That's where they're operating a lot of their offshore operations, is, in these little postage stamp countries that have been, kind of offsets of the Vatican, the same kind of independent international city-state bullcrap that allows them to get away with banking fraud on an absolutely mammoth scale. So, these are things that people need to be aware of. And as an entire world, we need to put an end to. And we don't need to be afraid, because we've been living in reality all our lives. In fact, we've been living in a twisted reality which created artificial impoverishment, suffering, death, and limitation. Completely artificial. So, this quote unquote liberation is nothing but good. And all we have to do is keep our heads, work together, and have a little common sense. I hate to say it, but everyone keeps talking about common sense. Even Donald Trump talks about common sense. Not that I'm convinced that he really knows what's going on, but we all need to kind of bear with each other, be patient, be kind, be practical, do what we can to help each other and help ourselves, help our families, bear through this. We know the end result. We know that we're winning. We know that the do-it-yourself Armageddon crew is going to be looking for work and pounding sand. We know that the values of things are still going to be rooted in the value of the human heart. I mean, the value of a home is rooted in how we value it, and how much we love it, and how much we put into it. Otherwise, it's as useless as anything else. So think of it in terms of what's really valuable. Life is valuable. Consciousness is valuable. Belonging to a community where you're loved and respected and protected, that's valuable. Having enough to eat and good food, good healthy food, that's valuable. Having enough water to drink, which is good healthy water, that's valuable. Having the little things that matter to you, having the books that you want to read, having music you want to listen to, being able to take a walk and enjoy the fine spring air, that's valuable. The environment is valuable. The trees are valuable. Plants are valuable. The animals are valuable. The air that you breathe is valuable. All the rest of it is just, even things like cars are very limited in their value, their true value. Here in America, virtually everyone needs 3 cars in order to get to work on time. And that's because people are constantly slamming into each other and causing injuries and damages. And also because these are constantly breaking down as machines, right? So we've done studies on this. It takes 3 cars per person in a family to be able to get to work on time. And that's crazy. That should never be. But between obsolescence being engineered into things and everything else that we see, that's the truth. Okay, so even cars are not necessary. If we had one car that really worked and really got us to our job, it would be necessary. But as it is, it's a joke. It's just a money mill. It's a black hole into which you pour money. Okay. And so many of these things that we take for granted and that we love, we could also do without, or we could find different ways of providing to ourselves. We could have far better public transportation, for example. We could have one car per family that actually worked and could be depended upon and was not subject to planned obsolescence. Okay? There are so many things that we could do that would improve our lives that we don't do simply because it's easier to have 3 cars than to have one that works.
Well, the
And
fact is, Anna, in fact, we did once exist very happily and contently without those things in recent times. Just speaking of valuable, I want to bring in the assembly leaders here, give them an opportunity just to share a bit of their overview of where they're at. Just as we'll get a few of them. Just who's up first? Maybe Gwen, Mookie, whoever's here, Peter, whoever wants to step forward. Just give an overview of progress of where you're at and maybe any urgent issues you have for Anna.
oh, I
Dolores.
need a pen and paper.
Dolores, anybody want to step forward now and just
Gwen on Canada.
hey,
How
Gwen.
about we start? How about we start with a happy report? So
Yay.
Terra Canada has successfully figured out how to stop the mob rule and calm down our people on the assemblies. So we didn't have to come to you, Anna, thankfully. And so we're grateful for that knowledge. But we have one question left over from that. As you know, we have our court standing and we're learning how to use it. Our people are starting to get serious about what is their job and how do I become effective and how do I just literally do what I'm here to do, and let's cut through tripping over periods and commas, as I say. So we're now trying to understand our role of our sheriff in our assembly because we have a common state assembly. We don't have our East and West counties standing yet. So we're now thinking he's, I don't want to use the word useless, but kind of sitting there waiting for his opportunity. And that it's our marshal at arms that works with us at the state level. But would we consider our sheriff then maybe for a position of a moderator, or how do we work him in? And that's our only question. So I yield.
Well, when the proposal I've heard from Canada, or at least from one of the provinces, is to create counties, rather large counties, that haven't had counties before. Is that right? Okay.
Sorry, I muted myself. That's correct. We did an East County for Eastern Canada, a Western County for Western Canada, and that just allows us to sort the mess until we know if we're going to be states or what are our provinces going to wind up looking like, because we have to have that referendum with the people or
Right.
when we get more on. So yes, I yield.
Yeah. When you walk back into your province, which is your equivalent to a state, you're automatically populating one of those 2 counties that you've created,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So you already do have a county, you just don't have a county assembly for each one, right?
That's right. Not organized.
Okay. So the sheriff would be the sheriff for East or the sheriff for West. Okay.
Okay.
In that circumstance. So you'd need 2, one for each
Okay.
county.
Okay.
And within that county, he would be the highest peacekeeping officer of the actual public law within the context of the county level of government. Okay. The problem that you have is that when you have such absolutely enormous counties, it's hard to describe what you're doing as local law.
Right.
And you know, it's always been more the concept that the the county would be more local and it would be more attuned to the individual needs of communities, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So having these placeholder counties is an entirely new concept. And the expression of a local county that is the size of half of Canada is it's a totally new, different definition of what a county is and how local law could apply. There is no such local law in existence. It has to be created, you know. So it's problematic how you set it up. That's my husband.
We had to, oh yeah, we did it because we were trying to solve the geography problem of being on every bit of the soil, because the Brits think that the ice is a waterway. And so that was our Band-Aid solution with 6 people when we started. And we thought, okay, this works now. Of course, we'll fix it. But
yeah, but for the time being, it would be 2 sheriffs, and they would be representing the East County and the West County. And
okay.
Then they would definitely have duties as a sheriff. You don't have to try to find some other duty for them to do.
Okay, wonderful.
They're going to have to find a whole hell of a lot of deputies.
Yes, yes, that's where we're at.
Okay, all right. So that's how I would see it.
Okay.
Now, I am not aware of any such thing having ever been done in the history of the world. So it's not like I can, get into my kit bag and give you advice from past experience. You're on uncharted ground here, Gwen. But there's really nothing objectionable in what you're doing. Okay. You're not intending to harm and you're not creating any harm. So it's certainly allowable. It's just never been done before.
It's weird, I know, but that's how we deal with. We have 20 working people who do everything in the assembly, and hoping for more to come on. And I think we will now, because we come from a point where we had individuals that were afraid of being publicized. And so now they're gone, and we will post how to find us and we will grow. And that's been kind of our whole. We actually had an interesting scenario where our Jural Assembly decided to host their own meetings their own way and kind of went private. And so I had some help, and I was able actually to go over the discipline manual in one of the assembly meetings. And then at the end of that, I gave them notice that the jury pillar was in suspense or been suspended because it was lost and missing, and their jaws hit the floor. And we were able to recapture what was supposed to be the meeting format we were following, which was a WebEx meeting format, so everyone would have knowledge of it. And so we're back on course again, but that was our problem. Anyhow, I yield and I'll let someone else chat.
Thanks, Gwen. Love the positivity. I don't know. I'm sorry. I'll have to excuse. I only just see hands here, so I'm going from left to right. Dolores.
No, Mookie goes fast. I will.
Oh, is it? Sorry, I didn't know. I only see left to right here. Wherever Mookie is. Where's Mookie?
Yeah, very kind of you, Dolores. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Tony, for organising this meeting, and thank you very much, Anna, for cutting the time for us each week. It's very much appreciated. I'll go straight ahead. Have you received our community papers yet, Anna? We sent them over a month ago.
Yes, I just got another big bundle day before yesterday. They take a long time to get here in the mail, but they get here. And it's damned impressive what you Aussies are doing. I'm almost afraid of seeing what you do in the next year. You've really made progress.
Yeah, we're kicking some butt here. We just had a big retreat with 86 state nationals from all over the country joined us here on the Sunshine Coast. And we took the opportunity to declare our independence and peace. And we're about to release a big video on that but that was done a couple of weeks ago. So we've declared independence and peace in the land and soil of Terra Australis, which is exciting stuff. Just wanted to have. Yeah, we're so apparently we're going through the General Assembly handbook, and we need international recognition. And we'd appreciate if you would recognise us publicly and say, yes, we recognise the Terra Australis States Assemblies, however you'd like to go about it. But apparently that's a part of our Declaration of Independence. We need to be recognised by other countries around the world.
Right. And our Declaration of Peace was issued in 2015. So you could recognize ours too.
Excellent.
It can be a reciprocal deal.
Okay. So how do we actually do you release a blog post on that or international notice? How does that
Find
happen?
international notice.
Pardon?
And we'll do a joint international public notice. And
Sounds great.
We'll just work it out between ourselves exactly what it says, and there you go.
Excellent. Well, that was easy. Thank you very much.
Yes. Life is easy once you make it so.
Okay, so we've got our Solicitor General on notice. He's been given 3 of your affidavits, you know something's wrong when, autographed by 25 state nationals with their 4-page addendum in the front.
Right.
So he received that nearly 3 months ago, and we've put in reminder notices and tacit agreements in place. We're still receiving race notices. Want to know if you're still receiving race notices? Do they still misaddress you to this very day?
They try, they constantly try. They don't get anywhere. They don't gain traction, but they try. It's just their nature. They're going to continue doing what they're told to do, like good little automatons, and they're not going to recognize the fact that they are liable for illegal and unlawful acts until they start being punished for it instead of being rewarded with a paycheck. Now, I've thought long and hard about this. I think maybe the best thing that we can all do is at our earliest convenience, fire them all, send them all home and say, okay, you were wrong. You were doing it wrong. If you want to come back to work and do it right, come back to work. And otherwise, bye.
Sounds good to me. Works for me for sure.
Now, how else do you as an employer deal with employees that aren't doing what they should do?
You need to get there 2 hours. Yeah, check on you.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go, guys. I've only got a 5-minute break here, and I have to take care of my husband in between now and the next podcast. So,
no problem, Anna. No problem. We can carry. Yeah, we'll carry this on next Thursday, Anna.
Okay, onward and upward.
Thank you very much, Anna. Much
Bye-bye.
love,
Anna.
God bless
Thank
you,
you.
Anna.
Thank you, Anna. Good night.
God bless.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Anna.
Good night, Anna.
Thanks, Tony.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers,
Thank
cheers,
you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Take care. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony.
No problem.
This
Take
was
care, Dolores.
fantastic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll go again next Thursday.
Well done.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you so
Good to
much.
see you, mate.
All right. Take care. Thanks, lads.
Bye,
Cheers,
everybody.
guys.
Bye-bye.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.
Bye.